record to the cloud. Welcome everybody, and this is the last and final lesson. I think last and final are the same for this course. It's been a joy studying together with everybody, and I think they left the best for last, both in terms of its power of the lesson and the lessons we can take, and in terms of some of the challenges that we might have with some of the ideas and getting accustomed to the way halacha sees things, which are sometimes surprising views, and ultimately getting a chance to see how values shape the law. And that's what we started this course with. We really started this course to understand how Jewish values are so important. Jewish values are not just the values of Jewish guilt, or the values of a worried mother, or the values of having 5 kugels at the Shabbos table. It's the question of what really is Judaism based on? What values do we really hold dear? And how far are we going to go to maintain that value, not only in theory, but in practice? How many values do you have that we associate with that team? You know, I'm on that team. But actually putting those values into practice takes another level of personalizing it, of committing to it and realizing, wait, I have a personal connection to these values, and I could really live my life by them. I could really maintain them, and I could not only maintain them, I could teach them, I could share them. Imagine having a value that you believe in, and you don't only shout it because everyone's shouting it, but you could also explain it. You could also, you could live with it and grow with it. And I think that's ultimately the best lesson, is that we're not expected to be perfect. We're not expected to have built-in directional points that keep on pointing us in the right direction and push us in the right direction. Sometimes it's a struggle, and sometimes we feel otherwise. But knowing that these are the values, and these are the values that we can grow with, knowing why they're valuable and how they differ, and what may happen if you had another value, what kind of conclusion might that bring to? Very, very special ideas that we had in each and every lesson. So this last lesson, we're going to discuss, as we begin the lesson, bias, personal bias. So before we get into that, there was a fellow Judge Jacobs. We won't call him Judge Jacobs because there's a new Judge Jacobs in town. A fellow Judge Shmulevitz, who is a long-standing judge in town, and he has 2 lawyers on the case that he's judging. And as he sits down in his chair, he turns to the lawyer for the prosecution, and he turns to the lawyer for the defense, and he says, my friends, Mr. Wilson and Mr. James, you both have given me bribes. Mr. Wilson, you have given me 15,000. And Mr. James, you have given me 10,000. And the lawyers are there blushing away. He says, Mr. Wilson, pulling out a check from his bag, I hereby give you a check of 5,000, and we will judge this case solely on its merits. So in Judaism, there is a precept of judges not taking a bribe. Why? Because then they have a prejudicial bias. They are going to be biased in their opinion about the case. If somebody has given them a bribe, that kind of clouds their eyes. So the word bias is not always looked at positively. But the word bias is a kind of a broader context. And let's do an exercise together. I'd love for you to open up page 166. So just sharing the invite here with Dimitri. And we have Alan on the other side, trusty thinkers, and hopefully we'll hear more throughout the lesson. Hi everyone, says Josh. Okay. So exercise number 1, sorry, exercise 6.1. Do you possess any conscious bias? Yes or no? Pick up your hands if you possess a conscious bias. Okay. Good, okay, we have a few hands. Chocolate ice cream up there. Anyone thinking of chocolate ice cream? I have a bias towards chocolate ice cream. Do you suppose that you possess unconscious biases? Alan says yes. Okay, Josh as well.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think I do too, Mimi.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you. Okay, so we're on the biased end here. We're all biased. So how do we judge this objectively, huh? And then number 3, do you consider certain biases positive? If yes, provide an example. And please write it down if you have a spot.
Can you explain to me the word bias?
Ah, good question. How do you define bias? We'll turn to the next page and we'll get a little bit more into that.
Okay. What's that word in Hebrew? Do you know? What's the word in Hebrew? Neged? Lo. That's
Neged.
against.
It's a...
It's okay. It'll come to you.
Google it. We should Google it. We should Google it.
I'm looking at Morphix.
Okay, don't worry about it. I don't want to stop the class. I'm just curious.
Hataya. Hataya.
Hatsaya?
To... Yeah. Hey, tet, yud, hey. Hataya means to like lean in one direction.
Okay,
Inclination.
okay. All right. So
It's modern Hebrew?
positive,
Hataya, not so much. So let me share the screen actually here so that...
do you consider certain, wouldn't you say, do you consider certain positive biases rather than biases positive?
I think it's the understanding that we automatically associate a bias in a negative sense. And that's why it's asking, do you consider that there may be certain biases that are also positive?
This question is not clear. Positive for what? For judging a case, it probably can be positive. For something else, it's like strong principles. About
Very good. Very good. Excellent. So do you have an example?
Of bias outside of the court.
Yes, that's a positive bias.
Anything we believe, like against stealing, for example, we know that it's bad. Somebody might say, "Oh, it's a good thing." Sometimes it's you establish like fairness, you distribute wealth in the right way. But stealing is stealing, and you know it's bad. They are biased.
Okay, I think that's more of an opinion rather than a bias.
Well, what's the difference?
It's what you think more than how you. Okay, let's. A good question, and I'd ask if there's anybody else that's ready to share an example. Welcome, Tzvi. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Rabbi. Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
No worries. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Anybody else willing to share an example of a bias that they're that they've written down that's positive?
The bias.
Oh my gosh, nobody? Okay, so let's look into the next text, number 1A.
Oh, prejudice. It's bias is prejudice.
So here we have two definitions, interestingly, two definitions of what the word bias really means. And I'd like to invite Alan to read for us the first text.
Prejudicial bias. So prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair.
Okay. So it's prejudicial, meaning it's before you've essentially judged and have merits upon which to make your decision. Before you've judged it, you've already decided, in a sense, in favor of, or you've already leaned in favor of one thing or person compared with another.
Right.
Usually in a way considered to be unfair. So that's definitely leaning towards the negative element of bias, because why should you be judging these two things so differently without real merit? Comparing and judging. Okay, text 1B. Susan?
Right, and a temperamental inclination, an inclination of temperament or outlook, especially a personal and sometimes unreasoned judgment.
Awesome. I believe that that's a very different feel than the first. It's the sense that we have a inclination in how we perceive things, a temperament or an outlook. You wake up in the morning, is it going to be a good day or a bad day? You tell me.
Thank you.
Some people wake up in the morning and it's going to be a great day. Some people wake up in the morning and it's a graft to get out of bed. Why? Because so it's just the way that you see. Have you ever heard of the term rose-colored glasses?
Yes.
I think that's text 1B definitely aligns with such a phenomenon. Having a rose-colored glass, you don't find people with rose-colored glasses that take them on and off all the time. The idea of a rose-colored glass is that you kind of commonly see things a certain way. It's more consistent. It's the temperament, the inclination of how you see things. And that can definitely have a positive end. Anybody else could now jump in with an example. I just want to get the wheels thinking here.
Well, a woman came to the house once, and she thought she was being very complimentary. And she said, "Oh, Jews, they all have money." So I thought that was, she meant it as a compliment, but it was incorrect. And it was a real prejudice, but it was, in her mind, a positive prejudice.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. So I don't even know if that works in 1 or B, A or B, but I guess, yeah, it's not always, coming with a negative vibe. How do parents see their children?
Bias towards their own children.
Yeah, they're biased towards their own children. It's not just that they're judging their children and other children differently. It's that there is an initial inclination, an initial kind of viewpoint that they see things from. Anybody seen the book Positivity Bias? You must buy it and read it. We actually should have a copy to borrow unless it's already lent out, but they say that the Lubavitcher Rebbe had a positive bias. That's just the way, honestly, if you break it down, the Lubavitcher Rebbe received thousands of letters every week. Now, how many of those letters do you think were sharing good news? Tsaras, they were tsaras, more tsaras from all over the world. You can imagine how much tsaras could you be sharing if it's from all over. There's enough tsaras to fill anyone's mailbox. And yet, the Rebbe always saw things in a positive light, always pushed it towards the positive end in incredible ways. I mean, people wrote to the Rebbe so often about not having children and blessings for children. The Rebbe himself didn't have children, and yet the Rebbe was so positive in how the Rebbe responded to keep up their faith, to keep up their trust. Amazing stuff. Okay, so how about how we judge ourselves versus how we judge others? Our personal bias. Do you have a personal bias, would you say?
This is Mimi. I put on a dress, I look at it and I say, does it make me look fat? That's a bias.
Yeah. So we have exercise 6.2. How is it when you come home late or when the technician arrives 45 minutes late for his appointment with you? How different? 1 second, I think something wrong. Check. Hey, sorry about that commercial break. Everyone's so quiet. I don't know, way too quiet.
So if I come home late, maybe there was just some unexpected traffic. But if a technician or a serviceman comes to my house later than they were supposed to, they're irresponsible,
Very
they're
good.
disorganized.
Very good. So Alan is saying some of the words at the bottom fit appropriately with each category.
Why didn't they call and give a heads up?
Why didn't they call to give a heads up, huh? Maybe their phone died and that's exactly why they arrived late, because they didn't have GPS. Yes, welcome, David.
Thank you very much. Oye, gracias. De nada. Okay, mucho gusto. Armando.
So we have Armando is joining us. Welcome to grab a
Better late
seat.
than never.
Better late than never. Uh-oh.
Do you have a glass of water?
Yes. Up on.
Just a little glass of water? My mouth is so dry. Getting here, all the aggravation.
So there we go.
Thank God I found
Welcome.
It seems to me that this example, I don't know, maybe it's not even biased, because one thing is to come to come home, to my own home, where nobody is actually, I'm not obliged to come at a certain time. It's my home, it's my time, it's my home. And another one, when you have an appointment.
Okay, so let's say you missed an appointment. If you missed an appointment, which word at the bottom would be appropriate?
It depends.
It depends. Let's say somebody left a mess.
But why I actually missed the appointment? There may be different.
Yeah, that's true. But often, out of the choices at the bottom, we would maybe choose some of the words rather than other. If you come late to an appointment, you would maybe choose the unexpected traffic or something came up.
Possible.
Yeah. But when somebody else comes late to an appointment, you usually choose the disorganized, irresponsible choices. Yes or no? How are we feeling yet? If somebody leaves a mess, huh? What do you think? What would you say about your own leaving a mess?
I gotta go on here.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna ready to move on to the next one. We have a personal bias that we've established. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So question for you. This personal bias, is it a good thing? Not sure why we're getting some feedback here. Is this personal bias a good thing?
I think it could be.
Could be.
In the sense of self-preservation. You know, if you thought of yourself as a slob, as disorganized, as a difficult person, I mean, you'd be pretty unhappy, and I think.
But you can judge them like myself, like I can assume maybe they have also good reasons, so I don't have to condemn myself, but I don't have to condemn them without knowing.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to propose here that bias towards oneself comes from the way you view yourself. And we may suggest that it actually might be a good thing to extend that to everybody. Why would you say if somebody left a mess that they're a slob? Whereas if you left a mess, you would just say, you know, I was in a rush. I just didn't have time to clean it up. I was getting back to it. Because if somebody looks at themselves and they see the mess, they say, you know, I know I'm a good person, but the mess is the mess. It's not me. It doesn't define me. Whereas if we're on page 169, whereas if somebody else comes late, we tend to define it. We define the result by the character of the person, not so much by the situation that came up. And so over here, you're seeing how the temperament or the inclination is able to automatically align you with a different result. It's not that you're judging them unfairly, it's that you're looking at a different element of the story here. When you look at yourself, you view yourself from a good place, and the situation is separate. When you view somebody else, it gets too intertwined and it gets tricky. And in Jewish law, you have an amazing mitzvah, righteous judgment, text 3a. Let's do text 2a, excuse me, student page 169. Josh, could you jump in?
Tzedek tishpot amitacha, you shall judge your fellow with righteousness.
Excellent. What does that mean? What would you say it means?
So I wonder two things. One, it could be if righteousness is something objective, so we should, use some sort of objective criteria to look at everyone that is fair. Also, sometimes, more often it's subjective, and so if it's subjective, try and lean on the positive side in the context of this lesson.
Okay, wait. So you've jumped already into the soul element of Tzedek Tishbet Amisecha. Tzedek Tishbet Amisecha is a very simple law that tells a judge who's judging to judge with righteousness. And I think that Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg had this up on her dais, maybe Tzedek Tirdev, or this one, I don't remember which one. But it actually has very practical implications. A judge is not allowed to have one fellow present his case without the other litigant present, because otherwise you're giving one an unfair position in before the other one has a chance to show up and even, get a word in edgewise or present himself, even be present. You're not allowed to start with one litigant before the other one shows up. But in a case of a mitzvah, the Sefer HaChinuch 2b, go ahead, Josh, and read for us 2b as well, if you don't mind.
Included in this commandment is the instruction to each individual to judge their fellows favorably and to deliberately interpret their conduct and statement in a positive light. Through judging others favorably, we will foster peace and harmony among people as a result of eliminating mutual suspicion.
Okay. So it's taking the value of a judge standing on his dais and bringing it down to the personal relationships that we have with each other. Done, have a done is kol ha'adam lechafze chus, right? So he's taking it and he's giving it a positive spin to judge our fellows favorably. That's actually a mitzvah, he says, in inclusive form of this general principle. Okay, so to judge others favorably, that's the going value here. To judge others favorably, is that being naive? What really is human nature? Are humans designed to be good or humans designed to be evil? Does judging people favorably kind of say, you know, we're all designed to just do good and that's why I'm going to judge him favorably? On what basis do you judge somebody favorably?
We want ourselves to be judged favorably.
Okay. And on what basis should you be judged favorably?
Because mercy is a good thing. But again, it's not even about mercy. We don't know it. As I understand, it's not like we know the person is wrong, but we pretend he's right. No, it's about when we don't know.
Very good.
Then why not choose positive rather than negative?
So you're telling me why not choose positive? Maybe it's if you have two choices, are they equal? Are the two options equal? Maybe he did it wrong, maybe he did it right. Probability is 50%, you're saying.
I think
guess.
I was gonna say,
One second, are you saying it's 50% or?
No, I'm saying in any case, if we are not sure, it's very possible, even if we think it's 3%, it's
Very
still
possible.
can be the case.
Okay,
So how can we wrong somebody who may be innocent?
okay, excellent. And that's why we have a principle of secular law that says innocent until proven guilty, right? Because you can't actually judge them unfavorably unless you know, especially to charge them and to have them guilty. You can't do that unless you absolutely know that they've done wrong. But what are we saying here when we say judge favorably? What are we including? I think we're maybe inclusive of before a judge is actually judging a case, guilty or not guilty. Saying in general, when someone's around you and there may be some suspicion, rather judge them favorably. So the truth is that if you asked Freud would tell you that people are not good. Inherently, people are not good. In text number 3, men are not gentle creatures. By the way, he chooses men specifically. I think maybe ladies are good people, but anyway, men are not gentle creatures who want to be loved and who at the most can defend themselves if they are attacked. They are, on the contrary, creatures among whom, exactly, instinctual endowments is to be reckoned a powerful share of aggressiveness. With the face of all his experience in life and history, will have the courage to dispute this assertion. Is that the wolf here? Okay.
She heard about the
So
wolves, so-
exactly. So we have here this idea of how Freud sees the universe. You know, things aren't necessarily predisposed towards goodness. So based on what would you judge people favorably? what probability is there here? But the truth is, I don't think most of us align with that theory. But when it comes to human nature, you know the joke, how many psychotherapists does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
Just one, as long as the light bulb is interested in being changed. How many psychotherapists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but it'll take about 9 sessions.
It's a good dad joke, Rabbi. It's a good dad joke.
It's a good dad joke. Thank you. Thank you. So human nature is actually debated. And some people say that human nature is not good inherently, but yet we've seen that the innermost core of man's nature is actually good. And because of that, you have so many instances where we kind of think that people won't do the right thing, and they actually do the right thing. They had a study. They dropped 200 wallets in cities around the world, and they dropped them with a number of bills inside. Some of them had multiple bills upwards of $90 or so, or in that currency, the value equivalent. Some of them had a couple of less dollars, and some of them had no money at all. And they assumed, and they did it in such a way that it would be easy enough for whoever found them to return them. And they assumed that people would be willing to return the ones that had no cash versus the one that had cash. And the truth was that it was the opposite. People ended up returning all the ones that had the money, and when the money was still inside, which is amazing. So are people good? We think that they're good. How does secular law ultimately approach this question? And so you have presumption of innocence, which is text 5. Wow, time is flying. But let's do text 5 because I think it's pretty cool. If anybody has anybody done jury duty here? Raise your hand if you've done any jury duty. Jane? I have not. Yeah. Josh has. Okay. Jane, did you have this read for you? The presumption of innocence before you began the case?
It was so long ago. I truly don't remember.
Okay. Well, take a look. The law presumes, and if you'd like, you can lead us in text 5.
You talking to me?
Yes, if you may.
Sure,
Thanks.
absolutely. As long as my dog doesn't bark. Okay. The law presumes the defendant to be innocent of the charge, all the charges against him or her. This presumption of innocence is a rule of law that compels you to find the defendant not guilty unless and until the Commonwealth produces evidence from whatever source that proves that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden of proof never shifts. The defendant is not required to call any witness or produce any evidence since he or she is presumed to be innocent. The presumption of innocence stays with the defendant unless and until the evidence convinces you unanimously as a jury that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It requires you to find the defendant not guilty unless his or her guilt has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I do remember this because the reasonable doubt is a very, that's the part that's very difficult. Yeah.
That's the backbone of our civilization.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so that's a powerful text, and and it's interesting how they choose the jury. I don't know if this is actually the fact, but they do try to choose the jury that they'd be less biased towards the result of this particular case. So if it's a teacher that's being charged, then they wouldn't choose other teachers to be the jury because they would have an affinity with the person being charged, and they wouldn't want to see them as guilty because they feel like, this is one of us. And so they try to remove all of that. But ultimately, what are they saying? You cannot charge somebody unless it's absolutely sure.
Mhm.
Now, what's interesting is that this may even be a convicted murderer who's on the stand, who's being charged with an additional case of murder or another crime that he's being charged with to have been committed. But because he's innocent until proven guilty, even though he's not a very righteous person, you cannot consider him guilty about this as well until you prove that he committed this crime as well. But Judaism, so not in this particular case, Judaism has a different take on this presumption of innocence in general. How does Jewish law see presumption that we should assume lechatchila from the start? Jewish law sees it as a presumption of righteousness. And I'll read for you just the beginning of this next text. Dechol Yisrael, Davar Galui V'Yadua. It's well known. This is from the Maharashdam. It's a well-known fact. This is text number 6, student page 173, that all of Israel becheskas kesherim, that all of Israel are presumed to be righteous. We'll stop there. What exactly, and sorry, I'll skip to the next paragraph, the last paragraph here. Similarly, God created each of us upright and honest by nature. People retain this presumption of righteousness unless it has been clearly proven that they have chosen to veer from the way of truth and righteousness and follow a deceitful and crooked path. So unless you have proven otherwise, the person is not only presumed to be innocent, but presumed to be righteous. There is a chazaka, there is a presumption of propriety, of kasher, of someone that is fit for the job, or somebody that's fit for the position and not otherwise.
I would ask what is righteous in this case.
Well, it's more than innocence.
What is it?
Good question. So in an example of a serviceman, someone who's has a particular service that they provide, you would presume that they do it well. If they claim to be a plumber, you would presume that they are a kosher plumber, and that they're not trying to do you in, or of something along those lines.
Yeah, but is it good enough to be a good plumber to be a righteous Jew?
No, I'm just giving an example of righteous, meaning that they're not just innocent of any charges, they're righteous, they're right in their ways. Righteous in their ways. So you talk about somebody as being righteous.
This initially, one of my reactions is it makes me nervous, because it holds, in some level, it kind of holds everyone up to a really high level, which is a beautiful thing, but it also means each person can fall really fast, and is a big distance to fall. So if something were to show up where someone is no longer righteous, it could lead to shunning someone in the community. It could lead very quickly, if this is a community perspective, to actually, I feel like this perspective has to be held with the same presumption that we had in the previous, the text from giving a positive spin from Sefer HaChinuch, the idea that we have to hold on to the positivity, which is based on some level of doubt that we don't know. So that way, even if we see something in someone that makes them appear that they're no longer righteous, that we don't drop them so fast when we keep in that doubt, because otherwise it could actually be more harmful. At least that's my fear. That's what I'm trying to express. I don't know if I expressed it well.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And I don't think that the text would argue with you. It's just that it's making you nervous because you're wondering what would happen or how somebody might be labeled. And I think that the terms of Ahavas Yisrael and Tzedek Tishbar Amitecha go and fill in the gaps where there are, for sure, absolutely. But the idea is that we're not being naive here. We're actually seeing human nature as positive. And that there is a cheskat kashrut based on that positive nature. Kashrut, like kosher, means fit, means that it's good. Cheskat, yeah.
That's because like presumption or a starting point.
Exactly. And honestly, we talked about earlier how you start the day. You know, do you start the day thinking it's going to be a good day, a bad day? Do you start the day looking at yourself positively or negatively? And in our prayers, we begin the day, first of all, with the Modani, which is a powerful prayer. And we are thankful to God for returning our soul within us. But then we say to ourselves, 1 second, what kind of a soul did I get back?
Rabbi, what prayer do we start the day with?
Modani.
Is that in the pamphlet I have?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the prayer I say
Yes.
when I put on the tefillin?
No, it's at the beginning of the prayer book.
Right.
You'll see it. So you start the day with a prayer which talks about the soul that God has placed within you. Elokai Neshama, text number 7. Does everybody see it? Page 175. Elokai, my God, Neshama Shenasatavi, the soul that you've placed within me, Tahirahi, it is pure. You have created it, you have formed it, you have blown that soul into me and you guard it within me, you protect it within me. So we literally wake up with a fresh start, with a fresh soul. Not only in the sense that the soul is ready for its mission, but in the sense that this is inherently what's inside of me. This is my core.
Does it mean it's good, or does it means it's neither good nor bad?
No,
Just
it's good.
clean.
No, it's good.
So it has already good inclination, but doesn't have bad inclination.
So you also have a Yetzer Hara, but this soul, which is your neshama, your soul, which is your core, is good. Now, the Torah's perspective on somebody that does something which is inappropriate is very interesting. This is from Sota. When the Torah describes a woman who's acted or seems to be acting with infidelity, with inappropriately, how does the Torah describe her position? And the Torah says that, as it's recorded in the Talmud here, people only transgress when they are overcome by a spirit of foolishness. In the sense that consciously, you've had a long day. Consciously, a person wants to choose and will choose in a good manner. But you kind of have this overwhelming insanity that comes over you, and the not the tendency, but like the at the moment, that feeling that overwhelms you to choose that sugary treat when you know I'm not really supposed to choose that sugary treat. You know you're on a diet, but that momentary overwhelming feeling is what overpowered you. And sometimes it's a consistent thought that kind of took over and didn't allow you to think otherwise. But the truth is, people are in a good position to make good decisions. Okay, till now we spoke about values and presumption of innocence versus presumption of righteousness. We didn't even begin looking at a case study. And the case studies today are no easy feature. They're difficult case studies. I'm testing the energy here, and I think we're gonna have a hard time. It's a challenging lesson, because so many of the applications are unfamiliar with us, because we're not dealing with legalities on a regular basis. And I think we all already know that we should judge others favorably. So the intricacies of the lesson are the development is a challenge. But I hope that it's clear. Any questions until now about our discussion of cheskat kashrut, that a person has a presumption of righteousness? Okay, so I think we're ready to move into the application of this value in Jewish law. How does it work? You might be surprised by this one, and it's a good example. We have in Jewish law the understanding that there are certain animals that are kosher, correct? Is a cow kosher? Is a cow kosher while it is alive? Alan says yes.
Yes.
For food,
No, I don't think so.
potentially kosher.
It's potentially kosher. What do you mean? Why do you say no, Jane?
Because it's just a cow. It hasn't been koshered.
Oh, very good. Excellent. Thank you. It hasn't been koshered. It's still alive. You cannot eat it. Kosher means it's fit to eat. If it's
But
still
wait a
alive-
minute. It has to be kosher, otherwise you wouldn't make it kosher.
Oh.
Cow is part of being kosher. This is an
Well,
animal
but-
you're allowed to eat. And then you do the process it, you process it.
Okay, but we
It
wouldn't
has the
call a cow
potential
kosher. It
to-
wouldn't have a hechsher. It wouldn't have a hechsher on it, because nobody's allowed to eat it. Only once it goes through the process of shechita, where you're limited to which animals you're allowed to eat. But even within the animals you're allowed to eat, you're not allowed to eat any meat. It has to be processed and made fit in a specific way. Now, I'm sure most of you haven't been to a slaughterhouse.
Right.
And one of the steps is where an animal is slaughtered, where there is a shechita, a process of slaughter, in a kosher way. And then you have many older participants may remember their moms who would actually kosher with salt the different chickens that they had at home. They would go through the process of koshering the chicken in their own kitchen. Nowadays, the butcher pretty much does everything. But back in the day, you had in your own kitchen a koshering board, which allowed for the juices to flow and run off. Very interesting that nowadays it's so different. But we need to go through that process of shechita in order to make it kosher. So an animal is assumed to be not kosher until you could prove to me that it is kosher. Because as it is alive, it's not kosher. Until it's slaughtered properly, it's not kosher. So it needs to be proven that it's being processed correctly in order for it to, yes, be kosher. So it's quite a big step from being not kosher to kosher. Now, what about a scenario? First of all, there are many different laws that would invalidate the shechita. If it's done specifically as it's meant to be, then it's kosher. But if the knife is blemished, or if the shochet put too much pressure, if he didn't know the laws of shechita, of slaughtering, it's not going to work, really. Yeah, he's got to really know the laws. So text number 10 is going to bring us to a case where a fellow, let's think of the shtetl. Let's think of the shtetl. You had Yankel who lived in the shtetl, and he had a chicken growing in his backyard. No, it wasn't growing literally from the ground, but it was growing, getting bigger. And he was ready, in honor of a family occasion, to prepare that for their meal. But he's got to bring it to the shochet. So he takes chicken in hand and he's on his way to get the local shochet, but it's all the way at the other end of town. And there he is, krechting, and he's complaining, and he's fixing his socks, and he's struggling to make his way over. And somebody nearby sees this process, and he says, "Why do you have to bring it all the way to the other side of town? I'll be happy to help you with the shechita here." He's like, "You're a shochet?" And the fellow says, "Sure." He takes his shechita knife and he does the shechita and he hands it back to Yankel to take home. Now afterwards, Yankel is thinking, 1 second, oh, thank you, Adam. I don't know this guy. Who says he's a real shochet? And he's worried what's going to be. Maybe it's not kosher. So now it's a bit less of a hassle. He doesn't have to take the long trek with a struggle. He's got a mission. He's all curious if this is a good or not good chicken. He's nervous. He quickly makes his way to the shochet and says, "Shochet, what's going to be with this chicken? Somebody help me, but I don't know who it was." And they look around, they try to find out who it was. They can't figure out who it was. The shochet looks at the animal. He can't really tell if it was done properly or improperly. What would you say? Would you consider this animal kosher? You have no idea who the person was that shechted it. What would Jewish law say? Kosher or not kosher?
Can I read the line in the Rambam, text 10?
Okay.
Sorry, I read ahead there.
Oh.
And I think it's a surprising statement where the Rambam says, "Hooray, if a Jew came and slaughtered an animal and left before we were able to determine whether or not he was a proficient practitioner, the meat may be consumed. It's kosher." The rationale for this law is that the majority of slaughter practitioners are experts.
Interesting.
Majority, huh? What do you say? What's funny about that statement?
Not all of them.
What? Not all the slaughter practitioners are experts. So what about the minority?
The problem is that not majority killed that chicken, but a particular person. And who knows, what if this is with our luck, tough luck, maybe this is actually not kosher chicken.
Very good.
The majority make it kosher if
Very
it
good.
was not kosher.
Very good. So even though we know that there is a majority and a minority, and we don't know who this person belongs to, but when we look at this specific individual, we say that this individual has a cheskat kashrut. He has a presumption of propriety. We assume him to be fit for the job because most people that would take on such a activity, if he had no clue how to do it, he wouldn't have even offered. And most of the people that offer are able to, are experts, but we're not just relying on the majority, we're looking at this individual and we say he has a cheskat kashrut. He has a presumption of propriety. So we're not being naive here, and yet when we look at the one individual, we judge him on his merits of kasher.
It seems that it's domain dependent because the Rambam says specifically when it comes to shechita, when we're talking about shechita, we know that they're mostly experts, but I wonder would the same rationale apply in another domain, for example, or shoe cobbling, if they do their work proficiently, if most don't for whatever reason, or I don't know why we would think that they wouldn't. But
very good, very good. So if there was a chazaka to combat the cheskat kashrut, if there was another presumption to combat the presumption of righteousness, then you would have to deal with both. In this case, we don't presume that he was not expert, because if he did it, the fact that the majority are experts help us in this case as well. But we know that there's a minority of non-expert, and yet we consider this person to be completely righteous without a doubt.
can we apply this logic as a like a larger, I mean, is the point that this is a larger presumption that we can apply in most cases unless we have a reason otherwise?
Yes, there are many, many applications of this, and this is one example. Yeah.
I think it's logical because even if somebody would come and bring like document, certificate or whatever, who knows, maybe it is a fake certificate, so they would never stop doubting. So maybe
Once you're doubting, you would never have an end to it. Yeah, I hear that. But yeah, okay, fair point. So that's with regards to slaughter. And if you look, we're not going to have time really, but text 11 breaks it down into the steps. It's a logical breakdown of it based on the Solivay's. I'm going to jump to text 12. If you thought that was an interesting, fascinating application, then take a look at text 12, the righteous suspect.
The righteous who?
Suspect.
What's that?
Somebody who is suspect of having
Oh,
stolen.
Suspect.
Yeah.
Oh.
Text 12, page 180. Yeah, okay, we have Alan here.
Witnesses saw a person enter another's house and leave with items concealed beneath his garments. The possessor of the items claims that he purchased them, while the owner of the house denies this. The law in this case is that the possessor is not believed. This principle only applies when the homeowner claims that the items in question were on loan and the possessor claims that they were purchased. But if the homeowner claims that the items were stolen, his accusation is rejected, for we do not presume a person to be a thief without proof.
So how's that? You have a little bit of a suspicious notion about this fellow leaving a house with things under his garments. And not only that, but the owner of the home, obviously this person belonged, having been in the home. For whatever reason, we're not contesting his being in the home and charging him for trespassing. And yet the owner of the home says that he took something which he was not allowed to take. So you may take these two things and say, okay, so he stole them. The owner says he stole them. He acted very suspiciously leaving the home. What would be your initial reaction to the story? Sure, he's a thief. And yet Jewish law says, no, you cannot presume him to be a thief until you have proof.
But what kind of proof? You see the item under his garment. The owner says it was here and now it's not, so he took it. It's mine, I did not sell it. Now it is in his possession. So what kind of proof we need?
Good question. So it would be understanding that this is in a case where it wasn't usual for them to give a receipt. Because if the usual manner was to give a receipt, the fact they didn't have a receipt would be enough to force him to return it. So what would be a proof that he stole it? It's a little tricky, but if you had video evidence of him asking, can I buy this? Or can I use this? Can I take this? And the owner would say no, and yet he still takes it and walks out. Then, yeah. Or if you had witnesses that saw that occurrence take place. If you just have the witnesses seeing him leave the house with these things under his garments, that's just not conclusive. And there is also a difference of opinion if this is based on cheskat kashrut or other elements to it. And in how many factors will we take to make us suspicious before we say, wait a second, too many factors are lined up against you that you need to that we're going to lean in the direction of the actual owner, of the initial owner. But the truth is, possession is 9/10 of the law, so that's also helping us in the direction of the person that actually has the object with him. And then there is one final element that we'll address before we wrap up the class. And that is text number 13. We're not going to do text 13 itself, but I'll give it to you outside first. You know, in law, there's a question of whether one is allowed to jump in and take and purchase something that they know others are looking to purchase. In secular law, if you knew somebody else was looking to purchase something, are you allowed to jump in and make an offer that would override their position and get ahead of them?
Yeah.
Yes. And yet in Jewish law, one who jumps ahead of someone who he knows is looking to purchase an object, though legally they're still allowed to keep what they've purchased, they're called, we kind of declare it as, no good, you've done something wrong. They're declared as a ramai, as a person acting indecently. So here you have an interesting case. You have in text 14, a case of an agent, where somebody appoints an agent. He wants to make a deal. He wants to purchase a property out of town. He appoints an agent to go ahead and make the trip to sign the documents and purchase the property for him. Very normal. He has a contractual relationship with this agent. It's an employee of his or whatever. He's the appointed agent to be my representative to buy the property for me. What happens if that agent then purchases it for himself? That would be rather indecent, right? This guy sought out the deal. He's made all the arrangements. He sends his agent to complete the purchase, and the agent purchases it for himself. That would be super indecent. So what happens if an agent comes back with a document having his name signed and saying, actually, I purchased it for myself? Look at this fascinating conclusion. Text number 14, righteous in spite. Dimitri, would you read for us?
A person appointed someone to serve as his agent to purchase a specific property. The agent purchased the property without specifying in the purchase agreement that he was doing so on behalf of the principal, and he now claims to have purchased it for himself in a personal capacity. The law is that we reject the agent's claim on the grounds that the Talmud Kiddushin 59a labels such an action as deceitful conduct, and they operate under the assumption that the remnant of Israel will not commit an injustice.
So we assume that he did the right thing, even though he's telling us that he did the wrong thing. We assume he did the right thing. Let me break this down for you. He made a trip on behalf of the seller, on behalf of the buyer, to be an agent for the buyer. He comes back with the document signed. We're going to assume that he did the right thing. When he signed that document, he signed it in his name, but as an agent of the original buyer. And then on the way home, he started getting a little bit thinking about this purchase and what it might mean that his name is on it. And maybe he was overtaken by a little bit of jealousy or a little bit of, he's starting to covet what the other person has. And he says, you know what? I'm actually going to say that it was for me. I like this deal. and I'm going to take it for myself. We assume that he did the right thing. And now when he comes to us and he says, I did the wrong thing, it's just a momentary inclination that he's overcome with, that he wants it for himself, but that's not actually what he did. He did the right thing. And right now, he's not so, he's a little shaky, but it's easier for him to say that I purchased it for myself than for him to actually do it. And we assume that he did the right thing. And on the way home, he may have had a challenge in his values, and that's why he says what he says now. How's this? So we take his word and we twist it and we say, that's fine. You say it's yours because that's how you think now. But when you purchased it on behalf of the seller. You are officially, you even say that you're officially an agent of the seller, of the buyer, excuse me. And therefore we're going to conclude that you did it for him.
Wait a second, so who gets the profit?
The person who sent the agent.
Okay.
Do we not think of it as him somehow like, in terms of like giving him like, oh, he wouldn't have done something wrong based off of this source, like that his words actually are actually that. So for example, like he almost becomes so much the agent for the person that he almost becomes subsumed in him. And so like he's, by signing for his name, he's signing it for that person. I don't know, like some way kind of reinterpreting his words as meaning they can't mean what they would literally, we would normally think what they mean. They must be meaning this good thing.
Well, the fact that his name is on the document is not a challenge to the buyer's claim that it's for him, because he's officially an agent. It's okay. The agent's name could be on the document, but it's on behalf of the original buyer, and therefore the fact that his name is on the document is not a challenge here. It's only his words that he's saying now, which present the question: who is it really belonging to?
But how?
So I don't know if that answered your question, Josh. Did that answer your question?
I'm not sure. I guess it's how the situation plays out. And because now at this point, we don't know what the conclusion is unless it's coming up next.
Well, the conclusion is that Lo Motzi Omar, he is not able to claim this claim because we assume that the remnant of Israel would not commit an injustice, and therefore at the time of action, he did the right thing.
But how can he claim anything if the document says he was just an agent?
The document, the document between the seller and this agent doesn't say he was an agent. But he agrees that he's actually an agent of this person in general, and that's why he made the trip. But when he actually made the purchase, he says, I made it for myself. So we say, no, you actually made it for him. And then you've had a momentary you're swayed in your mind in the moment, but that's not actually what you did. So think about this. This is a fascinating idea. Till now, we thought about how you judge others, correct? And that when you judge others, you should judge them favorably. And that every person has a cheskat kashrut. Now we're taking it and flipping it on its head. When I think in the society of today, there is a lot of leeway that's given to people to do whatever they want. In a sense, people are given quite a lot of leeway for their choices. How you want to dress and how you want to act, and there is quite a lot of leeway, and we're kind of encouraged not to judge others based on their actions in a general sense. Society has chosen not to judge others based on their preferences, not to judge others based on their leanings. Kind of whatever you do is good. But when you look at yourself, you know that you have failings, you have challenges. Sometimes a person could be stuck the most with their own challenges in the sense of how easy is it to let go of and to to not get stuck with something that you've done maybe not just once or twice. If it's a negative thing and you've done it multiple times, the shame involved and the idea that a person could even identify themselves in a negative sense. Nowadays, one of the biggest challenges is, who am I? How am I worthy? People looking at themselves negatively. And the Torah says to you, the truth is, you have a depth to you that you may not even be aware of. You may say, I bought it for myself, and the Torah says, You have a better depth there that we're going to help you discover. It's almost like, who do you hang, the pictures you hang up on your walls, right? They're individuals that you look up to, the people that you adore, or that you appreciate, that you want to consider their influence, grandparents or somebody, a great righteous individual. But when you look in the mirror, who do you see? Do you see someone who's capable? Do you see someone who's a blessing for the world? Are you motivated to really do good things because you have good energy inside of you? Sometimes not. And so we want to look at things around us, especially our own personal stuff that we carry, our own peckle. We want to be able to look at it not just with a limitation of how we sometimes act, but with a deeper perspective of what's really the core that's going on here. And my behavior is just sometimes that, circumstantial, but less essential to who I am. What's fascinating about the Torah is that the Torah brings out sometimes more than we assume of ourselves. It really pushes us into a better zone, places the ball in our court. The ball is in your court because you're good and you're able to do good. It's, they say sometimes about the interactions that people had with the Lubavitcher Rebbe that were so unique in the sense that the Rebbe saw so much more in the person than what they saw in themselves. You have a person who was a kung fu expert. He was a black belt in karate, and he had just become religious, and he was feeling inadequate in the sense of, his learning skills weren't amazing because he hadn't spent time studying in a yeshiva setting. His knowledge wasn't all that good. He was setting up his life, and he was meeting the Rebbe together with his bride, with his prospective life partner. And the question was what would he get involved in? And the Rebbe encouraged him to do smicha, to do the studies that prepare one for becoming a rabbi. And he's like, what? I'm not there. And the Rebbe encouraged him, not only that, but a step after that, to author a book in a particular area of Jewish law, which he went on to do. And he became a rabbi, not on a regular standard, on the highest standards that they have in Israel, the Rabbanut Smicha. And then he went on to author a book in Jewish law about family purity. He thinks back to that moment standing in the Rebbe's office and saying to himself, what? I never saw this in me. And yet, that was where the direction that he was able to truly take and own that position. It's the ability to see good in others, but also to realize that others are really seeing such good in us and to accept that and grow with it and identify with it as a part of who we really are. It's a challenge nowadays more than it was maybe in the olden times. People didn't think about themselves enough or so much, but now sometimes too much. We get stuck in how we view our peckle, our stuff, and we don't think we can get past it. And the truth is we can. That's just a graph that discusses where they drop the wallets and people returning the wallets with a lot of money. And with that, we conclude our lesson for today. And I'd also like to take the opportunity of wrapping up the course in general with some of the key points from each of the lessons. And I'll share a video which summarizes each and every lesson. And we haven't done that before, but I'd like to take the opportunity to do that this time, and you could tell me if it was beneficial for you. Give me one moment as I bring it up here. My JLI.
Just while you're,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the text on page 189, I think is fascinating. I mean, just kind of as a capstone onto what we were talking about, just like a person who isn't particular about the laws of eating kosher food and willfully eats non-kosher meat can still be trusted to slaughter an animal properly. That's an amazing idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Loi shavik heter of achol isura. Yeah. Thank you. So there are a number of things we didn't discuss. One, also in student page 190, it goes through a lot of areas of chazaka, that idea of assumption in a bunch of areas as it plays out in different areas of Jewish law. Let's do lesson 6 here. And let's do lesson 6 key points. Lesson 6 key points? No, it's all key points. 1 second. myjli.com. Desktop. 1 moment. Source. This is an incredible story here. JLI is unbelievable. There it goes. Key points, all key points. Here we go. So just sit back, and for the next 9 minutes, I hope to, 1 second. Hope to share this. Just 1 second. myjli.com. One minute.
And good neighbors. 1. All legal systems are shaped by their underlying values, but this is especially true of Jewish law. 2. While secular law views its purpose as maintaining social order by protecting individual rights, Jewish law sees its purpose as shaping society by guiding individuals to do what is right and upstanding in God's eyes. 3. Jewish law forbids spiteful conduct. Spite fences are forbidden, and people can be compelled to allow changes to their property that benefit others and come at no personal cost. 4. Certain unauthorized uses of other people's property that cause no harm to the owners are permitted by Jewish law. However, the owner generally retains the right to object. 5. When doing the right thing in favor of a fellow entails a degree of personal expense or loss, Jewish law declines to mandate it, but nevertheless encourages people to adopt this praiseworthy approach. Lesson 2. Beyond Restitution. 1. The Jewish concept of repentance is known as teshuvah. Teshuvah can be done A. for everything, B. by everyone, and C. at any time. 2. Teshuvah entails completely restoring the world to the state it was in before the transgression was committed. Therefore, in addition to regret and personal change, teshuvah also requires financial restitution and emotional appeasement. 3. Jewish values call on us to assist wrongdoers along the path of teshuvah. To this end, in cases of theft, Jewish law, A, allows substituting monetary compensation rather than return of the stolen item when its return would cause significant expense. B, provides a thief with compensation for investments he made to increase the value of stolen items. And C, places the cost of transporting returns on the victim of the theft. 4. When a longtime thief comes forward and wishes to do teshuvah, the Jewish legal system counsels the victims to not accept compensation in order to ease the process of teshuvah. 5. The approach of Jewish law is motivated by Judaism's perspective on the value of teshuvah, the belief that the offender deserves the opportunity to do teshuvah, and that we all have an obligation to help facilitate it, even through modifications in our legal system. Lesson 3. Beyond taking offense. 1. Judaism has a very broad definition of mutual responsibility. It's based on a vision of shared purpose and mission, which is influenced by each action of every person. 2. In addition to a shared mission, Jewish mysticism teaches that our souls are united. 3. Jewish law considers it a crime to remain silent when aware of a threat to someone else's life, and it also mandates that we extend every effort necessary to protect others from monetary loss. 4. The Jewish value of mutual responsibility calls on us to guide others away from transgression of the Torah's commandments. This must be done gently and be motivated by genuine concern for their spiritual welfare. 5. Jewish law also teaches that we are responsible to assist others in the performance of mitzvot. Our own mitzvah observance is incomplete until we do so. Lesson 4. Beyond personal freedom. 1. Judaism teaches that true freedom is living the life we were created to live. This requires freedom from human masters and devotion to God as the one true master. 2. In the past, people could be forced into slavery for failing to repay debts. Even today, prisoners can be legally compelled to work. By contrast, Jewish law does not allow for anyone to be compelled to work against their will. 3. Debt prison was another once ubiquitous tool for debt recovery. Jewish law has always banned debt prisons, even when stipulated in a loan agreement. 4. The employer-employee relationship requires an employee to surrender a certain degree of their freedom. Jewish law protects employees from veering too close to slavery by guaranteeing their right to quit mid-contract without penalty, unless doing so would cause the employer irretrievable loss. Lesson 5. Beyond lawful ownership. 1. Jewish mysticism teaches us that ownership reflects a spiritual relationship between the owner and the possessions. Our belongings hold a spiritual energy that only we can harness. 2. The Jewish theory of soul-related ownership does not just provide a definition of ownership. It also informs our use of our property and our manner of relating to the property of others. 3. Jewish ownership laws are based on strict principles. As a result, Jewish law does not allow us to take someone else's property without advance permission, even if we're certain the owner would approve. 4. Jewish law is very stringent regarding the return of lost property. obligating us to proactively retrieve lost items and seek out the owner. This obligation has no end date. 5. The strict principles of Jewish law sometimes result in leniency as well, such as allowing us to keep a found item if circumstances make it clear that the original owner has despaired of its recovery. Nevertheless, we are encouraged to step beyond the strict letter of the law and return the item. Lesson 6. Beyond presumption of innocence. 1. We have a natural tendency to judge ourselves favorably, a courtesy we typically fail to extend to others. Jewish values train us to extend our personal positive bias to others. 2. Judaism views all humans as essentially good by nature, on account of the pure divine soul we possess. Negative conduct is viewed as a foreign imposition on our basic nature. 3. Jewish law views individuals as righteous unless clearly proven otherwise. Unknown people are afforded more than the benefit of the doubt due to a lack of evidence. They are treated as certainly righteous based on the positive nature native to all humans. 4. In certain cases, Jewish law refuses to accept a person's own claim that they acted unethically due to the underlying presumption of righteousness. 5. Behavioral studies demonstrate that people are typically more virtuous than we assume. 6. Judaism teaches us not to judge people based on statistics or beliefs regarding the broader public, but to assess others with a favorable eye based on their individual merits.
Continue learning online. Okay. So that was a few minutes. We didn't do them regularly, and that's why I wasn't too sure how comfortable it was to go through them all at once. But I feel like it's just reminding us how many principles we covered in 6 weeks. It's just been 6 weeks. We haven't really
Great reminder.
done a semester of college, and yet we've covered, I would say, a considerable amount of values and information and righteous character traits, but not only that, for the way we could really act and apply those lessons in our lives, like today, tomorrow. You've got a neighbor, don't forget, you've got a neighbor, you've got to treat them well. You've got a lost object you're finding on the street, don't forget, there is a way to deal with that lost object. You're suspicious about somebody, no, you got to make sure to judge them. But you got an apple in the fridge, you got to check who it belongs to. These are very, very much daily occurrences, daily. And if we claim to live with Jewish values, we should know them and we should live with them. And that doesn't mean you can't enjoy your kugel or your chocolate ice cream. So if you have a bias to chocolate ice cream, go with it. And if the Jewish value for you is also kugel and cake, then that's great as well. And leaving off on a positive note, I'd like to invite everybody to a sit down in our home next week, Tuesday. So we're not kind of disbanding, we're actually regathering next week, Tuesday, in honor of the Rebbe's day of passing, which is considered a very, very auspicious day, the 3rd of Tammuz, which is this coming Shabbat. Mushka and I will be hosting not on Shabbos, but on Tuesday, due to circumstantial factors. We'll be hosting on Tuesday afternoon at 5:30 in our home. Look out for an email. You should see an email coming through about it. No charge, and everyone's welcome. It will be a Farbrengen of sorts, and we'll really share good words and stories and anecdotes and some song of the Rebbe's teachings and the way of living that we could all live, striving to be better each and every day. So you're all invited to that. That will be next Tuesday. Another short announcement is that at the end of the summer, we'll be having a Hebrew reading course, God willing, which is a 5-week course, which will help everyone refresh their Hebrew reading skills. Josh Weinstein next week is not at 7, it's at 5:30 p.m. We're just exploring another time. as well, I'd like to give a special mention and thanks to the sponsor for this course. His name is Yossi Malinsky, and his family. May they be blessed with much success in their business work, in their work at home with their children, in their work in their community, and thanking them for their engagement with the sponsorship of this course here. It's in honor of the yahrzeit of Yossi's dad, which is upcoming, the first yahrzeit. And for everyone looking up to the next year, God willing, in the fall, we will be resuming our flagship JLI courses. 3 courses are scheduled for next year as well. And so you'll find out about it, I'm pretty sure, because I'll probably share more about it. And if you enjoyed this, then tell your friends there's more to come. Thank you very much, Susan, for participating. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Jane. We see you, Jane. Thank you. And Mimi and Svi. And Richard sends his regards. He wasn't able to join, but he sends regards to everybody. Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you, Rabbi. This was a lovely course and an incredibly enlightening course on how Jewish and secular law intersect as well as adapt to each other in subtle and non-subtle ways. It's very fantastic. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, thank you. And there's Amanda who's joining us this evening.
Late.
And Dimitri, wishing everybody a gesunden Zummer. And hopefully we'll see you next week if you're around.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting.
And regards from Mushka, and a big thank you to Mushka, who's taking care of the fort while I'm with you this evening. And all
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mushka.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
And
night.
there's always more to study. MyJLI/Beyond Right. If you want to look at any more of the sources with regards to this course, you're welcome to check it out. Laila Tov, everyone.
Laila
All right,
Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.